getting to risk number 2, will AI ruin our society? Short version, as you write, if the murder robots don't get us, the hate speech and misinformation will.
Yes.
And the action you recommend, in short, don't let the thought police suppress AI. Well, what is this risk of the effect of misinformation on society that's going to be catalyzed by AI?
Yeah, so this is the social media. This is what you just alluded to. It's the activism kind of thing that's popped up in these companies in the industry. And it's basically, from my perspective, it's basically part 2 of the war that played out over social media over the last 10 years. Because you probably remember social media 10 years ago was basically, who even wants this? Who wants a photo of what your cat had for breakfast? Like, this stuff is like silly and trivial. And why can't these nerds like figure out how to invent something like useful and powerful? And then, certain things happened in the political system, and then it sort of, the polarity on that discussion switched all the way to social media is like the worst, most corrosive, most terrible, most awful technology ever invented. And then it leads to, the wrong, politicians and policies and politics and all this stuff. And that all got catalyzed into this very big kind of angry movement, both inside and outside the companies, to kind of bring social media to heal. And that got focused in particular on 2 topics, so-called hate speech and so-called misinformation. And that's been this saga playing out for the last decade. And I don't even really want to even argue the pros and cons of the sides, just to observe that that's been like a huge fight and has had, big consequences to how these companies operate. Basically, those same sets of theories, that same activist approach, that same energy is being transplanted straight to AI. And you see that already happening. It's why, ChatGPT will answer, let's say, certain questions and not others. It's why it gives you the canned speech about, whenever it starts with, as a large language model, I cannot, basically means that somebody has reached in there and told it can't talk about certain topics.
Do you think some of that is good?
So it's an interesting question. So a couple observations. So one is, the people who find this the most frustrating are the people who are worried about the murder robots. Right.
Yeah.
So and in fact, the so-called X risk people, right? They started with the term AI safety. The term became AI alignment. When the term became AI alignment is when this switch happened from we're worried it's going to kill us all to we're worried about hate speech and misinformation.
Sure.
The AI X risk people have now renamed their thing AI not kill everyone-ism, which I have to admit is a catchy term. And they are very frustrated by the fact that the sort of activist-driven hate speech misinformation kind of thing is taking over, which is what's happened. Is taking over. The AI ethics field has been taken over by the hate speech misinformation people. Look, would I like to live in a world in which like everybody was nice to each other all the time and nobody ever said anything mean and nobody ever used a bad word and everything was always accurate and honest? Like, that sounds great. Do I want to live in a world where there's like a centralized thought police working through the tech companies to enforce the view of a small set of elites that they're going to determine what the rest of us think and feel? Like, absolutely not.
There could be a middle ground somewhere, like Wikipedia type of moderation. There's moderation on Wikipedia that is somehow crowdsourced, where you don't have centralized elites, but it's also not completely just a free-for-all, because if you have the entirety of human knowledge at your fingertips, you can do a lot of harm. Like, if you have a good assistant that's completely uncensored, they can help you build a bomb. They can help you mess with people's physical well-being, right? Because that information is out there on the internet. And so presumably you could see the positives in censoring some aspects of an AI model when it's helping you commit literal violence.
Yeah. And there's a later section of the essay where I talk about bad people doing bad things.
Yes.
Right. And there's a set of things that we should discuss there.
Yeah.
What happens in practice is these lines, as you alluded to this already, these lines are not easy to draw. And what I've observed in the social media version of this is, the way I describe it, is the slippery slope is not a fallacy, it's an inevitability. Yeah. The minute you have this kind of activist personality that gets in a position to make these decisions, they take it straight to infinity. Like it goes into the crazy zone like almost immediately and never comes back, because people become drunk with power, right? And they look, if you're in the position to determine what the entire world thinks and feels and reads and says, like, you're going to take it. And, Elon has, ventilated this with the Twitter files over the last, 3 months. And it's just like crystal clear, like how bad it got there. Now, yeah. Reason for optimism is what Elon is doing with community notes. So community notes is actually a very interesting thing. So what Elon is trying to do with community notes is he's trying to have it where there's only a community note when people who have previously disagreed on many topics agree on this one.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get at, is like there could be Wikipedia like models or community notes type of models where allows you to essentially either provide context or censor in a way that does not resist the slippery slope nature.
Now, there's
Power.
there's an entirely different approach here, which is basically we have AIs that are producing content. We could also have AIs that are consuming content.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that your assistant could do for you is help you consume all the content. Right. And basically tell you when you're getting played. So, for example, I'm going to want the AI that my kid uses, right, to be very, child safe. And I'm going to want it to filter for him all kinds of inappropriate stuff that he shouldn't be saying just because he's a kid.
Yeah.
Right. And you see what I'm saying is you can implement that. Architecturally, you could say you can solve this on the client side, right? Solving on the server side gives you an opportunity to dictate for the entire world, which I think is where you take the slippery slope to hell. There's another architectural approach, which is to solve this on the client side, which is certainly what I would endorse.